Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Alien versus Predator Galaxy podcast. I am your usual co-host, Adam Zeller, or as I'm also known as, RidgeTop on our forums, joined by my usual co-host,
Aaron Percival, aka Corporal Hicks.
And today we have yet another Alien Romulus podcast for you. Another Alien Romulus interview. Who are we talking to today, Aaron?
We are talking to Cole Price and Matthew Savage, two of the UK-based concept artists who worked on, well, as Adam's just fucking said, Alien Romulus.
Yeah, and I'm glad we finally get to have some concept artists on to talk to. I'm sure they probably won't be the last ones we talk to who worked on this film. But concept art, as an art student myself, is something I've always been very passionate about. And I know a lot of people are still hoping for that art book for Romulus, because there's just such a treasure trove of artwork for this movie that keeps pouring out online that these artists are sharing with us and we're getting to appreciate. So it was great to be able to talk to these guys and find out more about their whole process in making this movie.
Yeah, definitely. It's always been one of the fun things about the Alien franchise is the amount of artistic talent that gets involved in these films and helps make these films. And Adam and I always say, this is the fun part of the film's release as well, is when these guys start to release all their artwork and we can dive into the specific details that are there on the still for us that we might have missed on the film. I think I mentioned in the actual recording that we're doing, I'm at this awkward time where the film's out on digital, but we're still a couple of months before we get it on home release, and I'm not double dipped. I've actually been self-restrained and not buy the digital version, but I'm there like wanting to do the freeze frames. I want to pause it. I want to see the details, but I've still got to wait until December. God damn it! But getting to talk to these guys, getting to see their artwork, getting to see those specifics and hear about the specifics and the design mentality that goes into it is such a fucking thrill. And I really enjoyed. I always love when I get to nerd out with these people, and this discussion, this interview was definitely a nice little nerd session, I think, Adam.
Yeah, it was definitely a great conversation. And I feel you, Aaron, about being tempted about the digital version, but I'm like, Adam, you have to be somewhat of a responsible adult. You can't spend $50 on the steelbook that comes with a digital version and then just buy the digital version again so you can watch it a month earlier. They should just release them at the same time, but alas.
Yeah, look, we'll not go off on a tangent about the business mentality of that, but we'll shut up. And well, actually, before we do, my camera goes out of focus in this interview, and I try to sort of get it working, but I don't want to be a distraction. So you're going to see me sat there out of focus for a bunch of this. For those of you watching on YouTube, just fucking ignore it. You're here to listen to Matt and Cole. You're not here to look at my pretty face, but just to acknowledge it. Anyway, without further ado, come geek out with Matt and Cole with us. Well, first of all, welcome to the podcast, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to finally get you on here. We always say, Adam and I always say, this is the most fun part of the film cycle is actually getting to pick up the slack of the actual studios and produce our own behind-the-scenes sort of content. So it's a pleasure to actually talk to you guys. Before we do start talking Romulus, though, let's get the boilerplate stuff out the way. So can you introduce yourselves to our audience? Who are you? What do you do? And what did you do on Alien Romulus?
Go on, Cobb. Go alphabetically.
Yeah, age before beauty. My name is Cole Price. I'm a concept artist, or sort of. And so on Romulus, I was in charge of Jackson Star, which was the whole thing. The mine, the street stuff. So it was nice. It was nice to get that.
And I'm Matt Savage. I same as Cole. I'm a concept artist, and I mainly worked on things like the vehicles, the ships. So I did the Corbellan, and I was lucky enough to do the inside and the outside on that one. And a couple of property bits here and there.
And can you tell us a bit about your backgrounds and what led to you working in the film industry? Cole, we'll go with you again.
We've got a few hours. Wow. Yeah. I think I'm coming up to almost 30 years in the industry now. I started off in the games industry, spent about 20 years as an art director for Sony, then an art director for EA, and then an art director at Evolution Studios. And at that point, when I was in Evolution Studios, I thought, I think I'll try and see if I can actually make it as an artist. And dropped everything and went freelance, which was a bit crazy at the time. And I've been doing that, I think it's 11 years now. So it's been a pretty cool ride, to say the least. I've just been very, very lucky to get on Romulus, to be honest. I just think it was one of them projects that's, you're never going to say no. You're not going to say no to an Alien project.
You've done other tentpole stuff for Fox as well, haven't you? You worked on Kingdom of the Apes.
Oh God, yeah. I've worked on stuff like Matrix Resurrections, Dune 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. A bunch of stuff. Yeah, in fact, I literally finished Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes on a Wednesday, and on a Monday started on Romulus. So it was nice. It was a good year that year.
This was 2 years ago you were doing the
2022. Yeah. 22 and 23. Actually, 23 was rubbish, wasn't it? Yeah. 22.
I like how you were art director for these leading game projects, and you're like, now I'm gonna try and be an artist for real.
Yeah.
But do you find that common that people go from the gaming space in the world of concept art to the film space?
You know what? I think with me, it was because I'd go further and further and further up the ladder, and you get so disjointed, you get less and less artwork to do, and it was killing me. I mean, the last proper in-house studio game that I worked on was Drive Club for Sony, and I was art director on that. And I forced myself to do the concept art with the concept art team, and it just got so frustrating. And I thought, I've just got to do this. I've got to try and see if I can actually do it and make a living as an artist, which is, predominantly what a lot of us aspire to. But I mean, you get a lot of people. I mean, talking about people before, the guy that you mentioned before, he's now looking to try and get into the film industry, because I think it's just a natural progression, really. You start off in games. I think a lot of people in games actually wanted to go into film, but couldn't find that avenue. I know when I started off, it was just ridiculous. We're talking 1995. I mean, nothing existed in the UK to get into the film industry, and probably at that point in time, concept art was so niche. It was just unheard of to try and get into that. But I always wanted to get into visual effects and couldn't get into visual effects because there was literally non-existent, and landed up going into games and just spending 20 odd years in the games industry. So I think a lot of people now, it's a lot easier for them to jump between, those two sort of disciplines. There's a lot of guys I know that work on games and film. We don't see any difference now. So it's nice that we can do that,
I suppose it's a different communication landscape now as well. It's more than somebody, there's whole avenues on the internet for you to get noticed and make contacts.
Yeah.
Which I think isn't that what happened with Nick, one of your cohorts on?
Yeah.
Was it ArtStation that Fede?
Yeah.
I mean, Nick, you'll have to get Nick on because Nick's got the best story out of all of us. Fede just found him. Yeah. And I mean, Nick was kind of a rising star anyway, but Fede kind of plucked him. Then he had a random email. It's like, do you want to? I think Naaman Marshall, our production designer, emailed him. Set the blue email heading "New Alien movie," and I think he thought it was a joke.
Naturally, I mean, how often do you get those emails?
Yeah.
And I think the same was it was the same sort of situation for Pablo.
I think so. I mean, Pablo's kind of Pablo was pretty established anyway. He's got quite a good sort of following, so I think it was the same kind of deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, what about yourself as well? You know, you're not shy of notable IPs on your resume.
I've been very lucky. We have had a good. The last 10 years have been really good film wise. I'm slightly different to Cole. I went straight into film. I didn't really do video game stuff. I clawed my way into the film industry because it was kind of the only thing I was really interested in doing. And I started as it's called an art department assistant, which is the ground level runner job, I guess, within the art department. It's making tea and coffee, and I did that on Batman Begins. Was my first sort of proper paid gig, and then just sort of moved into concept art pretty quickly, and just been very lucky. I've had sort of dream projects have kind of been announced around the time I've been ready to move up through the ranks. So I did. I think Doctor Who was my first concept job, and then I can't remember. There was an X-Men movie. I did a bunch of Star Wars movies, Prometheus, and The Martian.
Nice. So some Ridley Scott early on as well, before jumping on to a big Alien.
Yeah, I mean he's a huge hero of mine. So I've been lucky enough to be in the same room as him a few times now.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. So while it may be a default Alien podcast question, it's also one we never get sick of hearing the answers to. For many of our audience, our introduction to the Alien franchise is one that is burned into our memories, as it had such a large impact on our lives. Can you both remember the first time you ever encountered H.R. Giger's nightmare fuel? Was it through one of the films or through a piece of ancillary material? Let's start with you, Cole.
Yeah, God. I remember that because I think I was around about 13, 14 when Alien came out. And I had this huge poster, you know, the gatefold posters that you used to get when you were kids. And it had that really amazing shot of the space jockey and the crew next to it. And, you know, I mean, back in that day, and I'm going to sound ancient because I am ancient, but we had no internet. We had even on the TV, you never got trailers for the film unless it was after 9 o'clock. So when you saw this image, it was like, oh my God, what is that? And that old analogy of, you know, you've never seen anything like this before. Well, that was what it was like back in that era. It was a bit like when Star Wars came out. No one had ever seen anything like that before. And the same with Alien. When Alien came out, it was that image, that one image. And I was always absolutely obsessed and fascinated by that. What really got me into the franchise wasn't so much Alien, it was Aliens, because I saw that on the big screen when it first came out, and that was amazing. You know, I mean, I'd already seen Alien on VHS by the time Aliens had come out, but Cameron's Aliens absolutely blew me away. I mean, seeing that on the big screen and not knowing anything about it, whereas today, you know everything before you go into the cinema, what the film's going to be like, but not only seeing trailers that were in the cinema. So seeing those films like that for the first time, just going in completely cold, just amazing. But like I say, that one image, because I always remember that poster. It was the egg, the Alan Dean Foster book cover one with the egg on the front, and then the back, it was all like the gatefold stuff and all the pictures of the crew. And I mean, even the chestbuster scene, that wasn't allowed to come out by the press. It was talked about in the press, And obviously people were coming out the cinema going, oh my God, that's horrific. But I never saw that until it was on VHS. I wish I'd have been able to see that first one on the big screen though. But Aliens was immense watching that. That was so cool. Still a cool film today, you know?
Yeah.
No arguments here.
Yeah, it's only one of two that I still have not yet seen in theaters. So I'm hoping for the next anniversary, I'll be able to find a screening for that one.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I mean, as much as we in the UK get screwed over with special screenings and stuff, we do get far more showings of Alien and Aliens than they do in the States. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And how about for you, Matt? How were you introduced to Alien?
Well, I missed the first one. I was born in '79, so I obviously didn't see that one in the cinema. But by the sort of early '90s, there were lots of sort of xenomorph things popping up in things like The Simpsons and Tiny Toons. So I was kind of aware of this, you know, I didn't know it was a movie. But I saw a trailer for a Ridley Scott documentary in about 92 or 3 when I was 12, 13. And it was a loaf of bread because of his Hovis commercials. And then a chest burster came out of the loaf of bread, and that was the trailer for this Ridley Scott documentary. So I taped that documentary that evening, and it had Alien and Blade Runner, and that sort of just opened my eyes to slightly more adult science fiction, having been raised on kind of the fairy tale, you know, Star Wars and things like that. I was kind of searching out more adult. And the Alien, when I was 12, Alien looked a bit like Star Wars, but it looked better and darker and more interesting. I think my dad must have seen me watching the documentary because he bought me the widescreen Alien VHS that week, completely unprompted.
That's good parenting right there.
What's that?
That's good parenting right there.
Well, I don't know why he did it. I don't remember asking for it. I think he saw me watching the documentary and saw I was taken by something in that documentary. And like Cole, it just became an obsession as I moved through the films. I was obsessed with Aliens afterwards. Alien is now my favorite movie, but when I was 15, Aliens was just everything. I've ruined that movie forever because I just watched it so many times. I know it in and out, and there's nothing new there for me. So I have to rest it for a year or two, you know, to watch it again.
I think that's just the right film for a teenage mind, though, isn't it?
Oh,
I mean,
the design, everything, the story. And it never ends. Like, it goes on. They go back to the atmosphere processor. They go back to the Suaka. There's just always like a third act, a fourth act. I couldn't get enough when I was a kid.
Yeah, immense, absolutely immense. You know, seeing that with your mates, and yeah, we were all, you know, 15 and absolutely hyper. And then watching that was just like, you know, within a couple of weeks, I think we'd seen it a couple of times and everyone knew the words. And, you know, Bill Paxton was our hero. And, you know, it was, just such a really good film. In fact, I watched it a few weeks ago and I hadn't seen it since working on the film. And you just, every time it surprises me, every time you watch it. I mean, both of them, just how good these films are, that they've lasted that long. I can't watch the end of Aliens anymore because it's too stroby, which is just bizarre. I just cannot watch it. So I have to use my imagination of what I remember in the past happens, you know, switch it off, right? That's it. Flash your lights are on, you know. But the other one, you know, the Cameron one, oh my God, it's one of those things that you think it's going to end and then it doesn't, and then you think it's going to end and then it doesn't, and it's just a joy to watch, you know. It's just incredible, really is.
Yeah, I can relate. It certainly affected Aaron and I a little bit, I think. I guess you'll have
different ways.
I guess you'll have to get that VHS though, right, Matt? for Romulus they just announced.
I have to buy a VHS player as well.
Yeah.
How cool is that, though? I mean, the way Isolation and Romulus are now embracing the sort of 70s and 80s vibe with the cassette soundtrack for Isolation of VHS.
It's definitely a generational thing, because Alien 3, well, the first 4 movies I only saw on VHS until when did we get the DVDs?
98?
Must have been late 90s.
No, because DVDs weren't really a popular thing until 2000s, were they? I'm going to Google this. When was the Alien Legacy box set out?
Yeah, you had the Legacy, and then you had the quadrilogy in 2003, I think.
Thing is, I reckon it's going to look fantastic on VHS. It's, you know, I don't know what it is. I've still got Akira on VHS, and I remember when I upgraded it to like Blu-ray, and I watched it and I went, oh no, it's too sharp. It's like, because all the colors merge into each other and it looks kind of different. And when I was like, oh no, it's not the same.
Sometimes the remasters go better than others. Like I know I've seen a number of 4K re-releases that have been awesome, and others that have not done well. Akira is one I want to see, because I believe that came out in 4K a few years back. But yeah, I think there's a real appreciation for like analog aesthetic now, because so much of our world is digital, and that's why you're starting to see things like vinyl and even cassette tapes like kind of taking off again. And this is the first major studio film that's being released on VHS. It's like what, 2006, I think.
It was something like that. 1999 for the Legacy box set, by the way.
But Alien is a franchise that has been around since 1979, and as we've seen with Alien Romulus in 2024, is still capable of capturing success both critically and with audiences. What do you think it is about the Alien franchise that helps it continue to endure after so many decades of stories and iterations? Let's start with you this time, Matt.
I don't know, because obviously when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the technology, particularly in Aliens, the power loader, the APC, the dropship. I was obsessed with sort of the realistic tech in that universe. But I wonder whether Aliens transcends that and talks to a broader audience because of the political, and not to get political, but the class system. Even, you know, with Brett and Parker, like we've all had jobs where we're moaning about our boss and the company, and you know, Fede's kind of brought that right up to date now with his gang of kids being trapped within a company. And I wonder whether that speaks to people without them even knowing that's why they like those aspects. So yeah, I don't know. I think it sort of transcends normal sci-fi because of the class system that's just running through most of the movies. I mean, it's definitely there in Aliens to some degree. Alien 3 definitely has the have and the have-nots. So no, I think it talks to you on a slightly deeper level. But I don't think most people probably aren't. I definitely wasn't conscious of that as a kid, but it's kind of the thing that resonates the most. You know, now that Cole and I are working for Disney, it's you know, we're often complaining about the company.
It's funny because that's one of the aspects of it I find I appreciate more as I get older as well.
Yeah.
You know, when you work for inept bosses and discaring companies and directors, you kind of start to see yourselves in those sort of situations, more complaining about the effort you put into a job for a shit wage. Managers that don't seem to give a shit.
Edge that Guy Learnhill kind of mixed in with the B movie fantasy stuff that, you know, Bannon and Shusett had. I kind of, as a kid, I loved the fantasy stuff, but now as an adult, I really appreciate the cynical, you know, the company man hiding within your group of mates. And I guess we just get more cynical, don't we?
Is it cynicism or is it just realism?
It's equally both. It's being cynical about the reality of the situation.
Again, it kind of evolved between those two films. I mean, the first one you've got, it's the haunted house in space, and I think that's what got everyone into it. It was like, wow. And I think the political stuff, even though there was some of it in with Ridley Scott's one, I think Cameron brought it more in. And during the 80s, don't forget, when that film was coming out, there was a lot of almost dystopian disquiet in cinema, where you had, stuff like Blade Runner, and every 80s film was like pretty, sci-fi stuff was pretty dark. And I can't help if that was not reflecting the times. I mean, I know what it was like in the late 70s and 80s in the UK. There was a lot of strikes going on. Everyone was disillusioned. Thatcherism was in here in the UK, and it got bleak at times. And I can't help but think that worldwide it was the same, and that got reflected in cinema. And it was that, like Matt said, that the big corporations were stepping in and working behind the scenes. And I suppose it was that then. We all know about it now, but everyone was quite naive going back then, because we didn't have the reams of communication that we have today. So they were quite ahead of the time, and I think that's why they've stood the test of time. Apart from them looking absolutely staggering as well, what Ridley Scott did has spawned an entire, I mean, you ask just about any artist what's inspired them. Most people, I would say, most artists, if they're in their 40s, it would either be Alien or Blade Runner. They're the two that's inspired everyone. Maybe Star Wars, maybe something like that, but mostly it's the darker stuff that's brought everyone into the industry.
Yeah. And Matt, Romulus wasn't your first foray into the Alien universe. Like you mentioned, you'd previously worked on Prometheus, and you'd worked on the British-based Alien Containment, I think it was called. Yeah. Can you tell us a little about those experiences and your responsibilities on those productions?
Yeah, Prometheus, I mean, I mentioned I clawed my way into the film industry. I clawed my way into Prometheus because I was working at Pinewood on an X-Men movie, and it was Fox. So we kind of got word that untitled Alien prequel was incoming. I was quite late to that party. They already had that amazing team, like the Ben Proctors and Steve Messing and people like that in America. So they were pretty much done in the art department. So I went and found Janty Yates, the costume designer. And I'd just been doing costumes on X-Men First Class. So I literally went like, this is what I did today. Can I have a job? And purely by chance, she said, oh, we haven't done anything on the spacesuits yet. So it was I wasn't as involved as I was on Romulus, but I had probably a couple of months at Pinewood in the snow, working with Janty.
So as in those blue, big helmeted ones.
We did. I originally did a suit that they ran out of money to do. They were going to do, when they eject from the Prometheus at the end of the movie, and they go in those pods, they were going to sort of vacuum form on an emergency spacesuit, which we designed. It was like a 15-minute life support spacesuit, skin tight, small space helmet. We did that. And we got into Ridley's good books. He was happy, and then they ran out of money for that sort of bonus spacesuit. So we worked on it was like a blue neoprene sort of wetsuit with the sort of orange piping. But yeah, that I was thrilled. Janty, I mean, I wear my nerd credentials on my sleeve, and Janty knew I was a big Ridley fan, so she very kindly let me sit in on the meetings and meet with him and show him sketches. And the short film I did, I can't remember the director's name, which is really poor form. But he happened to email me as I finished the job, and he took a punt and said, "We've got no money, but can you design us a spaceship?" And I happened to have a couple of days free, and I was like, "Yeah, you know, it's." He dangled that alien carrot in front of my nose, and I was
Chris Reading, I believe.
Yes, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was one of the Tongo shorts.
Yeah. I was so annoyed. If I didn't know that was a thing, if I knew that existed, I would have pitched a short film. And the first I heard about it was when he asked me to do the ship for them.
Oh, that sucks. Well, though, at least you got to be involved before.
Yeah, they're lovely people. Yeah.
So can you tell our audience a little about how you both came to work on Alien Romulus? How did that process begin? Let's start with you, Cole.
So I am the only member to have worked on it twice. So what happened was back in August, I think it was, of 2022, I do a lot of work for DNEG, and I got an email and a Zoom call off my boss Ravi, and he's like, "Oh, we've just got the new Alien film in. Do you fancy having a go at it?" And we started. There was about 5 or 6 of us that were on that. I think what Fede was doing was he was shopping around all the VFX companies and just pitching to them, and they were doing concept work and VFX blockout shots and that, and then they present to Fede, and he'd go yes, no, you know, that type of thing, and whoever won it would get the job. But yeah, I ended up working on that for about a month. In fact, I'll probably post up some of that stuff because I think some of it actually made it into the film because we had people like Stephen Molyneux, who's in the credits, because he messaged me and he went, "How am I on the credits?" I said, "That's because your alien that you sculpted along with one of the other guys, that was actually used as reference stuff." And so I think Fede must have thought, well, we've used it, we're going to have to give them credit for it, which I thought was absolutely amazing for him to do that, you know. And then I was off working on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Naaman emailed me, and Naaman was like, "Do you want to work on Alien?" And it's kind of a weird one because I was actually humming and hawing whether to do it. I know Matt's going to throttle me afterwards for saying that, but it's because the weird thing is when I was first working on it, originally it was going to be like on Disney Plus, and I was thinking, oh, what are they going to do with this? It's Alien. I want to work on an Alien film, but it's going to be on Disney Plus. And then Alex Nice messaged me.
What was the hesitation there? Budget or tone?
Tone. You know what? What they did with Prey was brilliant, but I always thought they could have gone further. And I thought because it was on streaming, they're not going to do that. And I was thinking, oh, what are they going to do? What are they going to do to an Alien project? And it's going to be on Disney. And it was kind of like, oh, I don't know. And then Alex Nice messaged me and said, I've just got on to Alien. I believe Naaman's messaged you. Are you coming on? And I was like, oh, and he said, and then I think it was Alex that told me who it was that was directing it. And he said, it's Fede. He says, the guy that did Don't Breathe. And I was like, oh shit, man, because that film is great. I mean, it's so good. And I think then it was just like, yeah, you know what, I'll do this. And luckily enough, I think I had about 2 weeks left on Apes. And like I said before, I finished on the Wednesday and started on the following Monday on Alien. Probably the best decision that I've ever made, to be honest. You know, and how wrong did I get it? You know, I mean, originally when we first went into it, it was still going to be on Hulu and Disney Plus, and it wasn't until, you know, later on, I think it wasn't until Fede showed them the footage that he showed us in Budapest, and then he said it's going to be cinema only, and we were like, wow, that's amazing. So that's how I got onto it. I was just really, really lucky, and again, lucky that we had the team of guys that we had on it as well. Because as soon as I found out who was on it, I was like, wow, they're not going for the cheap tickets here. They've got some really good guys, and they had Matt. So
they had some scrappy money left over.
Yeah.
And how about for you, Matt? How did you come upon the project?
I remember. I think I heard your sort of podcast announcement when they announced the project, and I was interested enough, but I didn't really follow it through until they ramped up. That was sort of March, and then by June, July, they were ramping up. And the closer the train gets to the station, you think, oh, I should send an email. I want to do that. And then a friend of mine went for a job to be the set decorator, and she didn't get it, but she told me that it was an alien movie in the 79 mold, and it was CRT monitors, and the Fede's vision for it was a classic alien movie. And then I was just all in, because I much as I love Prometheus, I'm a 79 kid.
Yeah.
And Cole actually gave me Naaman's email, and I prepared a PDF portfolio with only spaceships in the portfolio, because I was so keen to do vehicles. I sort of set myself up to do that, and I sent Naaman an email, and he came back within, I think, 10-15 minutes and said, we'll start in 2 weeks' time. I'm on holiday. When I get back, we'll start work. So I was super thrilled, and then I just had 2 weeks of biting my nails, thinking, is he going to email me back? Do I email him now? But again, it was a job I was desperate to do, so I went for it.
That's awesome. And Cole, I hope I didn't cut you off too soon earlier. You were saying you had like 2 stints on Romulus?
Yeah. So first time was with DNEG, and then I went on to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, worked on Apes, and then went on to the proper production. Because at that time, when it was through DNEG, there wasn't even a production designer. It was literally Fede. Fede had already written the script then, and he was just spitballing to different visual effects houses. Yeah. And we found this out because on the Dropbox reference, there was all various companies. And when we clicked in, I was like, oh, there's my artwork in there from like when we were at DNEG, and he'd got people from Frame Store, and he'd got people from
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
it's pretty standard with a big movie like that. They'll put it out to tender, and they'll give. I think a lot of these companies, they'll do it on spec. So obviously Cole and his guys get paid, but the company will do 5 or 6 weeks R&D just, because it's a gig they really want to do.
So your work with DNEG, was that actually like part of the pitch, or had it already been completely greenlit?
No, I don't think it was part of the pitch. It had already been decided, because we all knew at that point, and Matt hit the nail on the head. That was one of the things that appealed to me. Was I remember having a conversation with Ravi Banzel, who's the head of DNEG, and the art department for DNEG, and he was like, he wants to do it like in the 70s style, and I was like, oh man, that's really cool. That's it. What, because I like Prometheus and I like Covenant, but I really prefer the old retro style stuff. And then I remember us having a conversation about the station getting hit by the rings, and we were like, how cool is that going to be with all these rings crashing through the side of the station? And it was just something that really like kind of stuck in my head. But I always had it in the back of my mind, if it's going to go to Hulu, or Disney, and then like I said, I got the call off Naaman. I think I joined fairly later on. I think, Matt, you guys had already been on it, hadn't you? And I joined in around about October time, maybe September.
I think I was on last week of July of 22, and then I think you were on by September because we had these really nice sort of town hall meetings where there was Cole and I and Nick and Dane who were up about 3 a.m. to get on the call.
Yeah.
Josh and Alex, all the American guys, and just like this, we'd have all of us and Fede in the middle with Naaman, doling out the fun work for us to do.
Yeah.
And what did those early days on the film look like? Like, what were the very first elements you began to design for the film?
The ship. The ship was so I guess because I sort of led with that in my portfolio that I was on the ship pretty much from day one. But Fede did have this kind of Wild West attitude where he gave everyone their own thing to do, but if we wanted to have a go at something in the script that he hadn't mentioned or hadn't got to, it was a real sort of fun way to do it. It could have blown up in our faces, but I think it worked. It seemed to work really well. A different group of people, it would have been a mess of people redrawing everyone's stuff, but it was good. So I'd be working on the ship, but if my brain was melting from just trying to work out where rooms go within the ship, I'd do a prop for a day or something like that.
And how about with you, Cole?
So originally I was on the station. I don't know whether I should tell this story. So I was on the station, designing the station. That was my first job. And I was like, oh God, this is awesome. I'm doing the station. Me and Matt be having these conversations in the morning, coffee mornings that we would have over Zoom, and talking about, Matt be talking, drooling over his spaceship, and I'd be talking about the space station. And then for some reason, Fede wanted to try and incorporate a wolf into the station. And it just went to shit. It was just it was a nightmare. And I did hundreds of sketches, and he just wanted sketches, and Naaman kept ringing me up going, just give him options, just give him options. And even Naaman was like, how the hell are we going to do this? He wants a wolf. And we were trying to do it really abstract. And he'd even sent us a photograph of this wolf howling, and it was like, and after
as in the silhouette of the ship, the Renaissance station had a wolf appearance to it.
Yes. So at some point it would turn and revolve, and you would slightly see maybe the resemblance of a wolf or something like that, or there would be elements in there of a wolf.
You tried
I tried everything. I tried everything except the wolf's ass. Honestly, I tried everything, and it got to a point, bless him, Naaman would bring me up, and the two of us be like sweat coming out. Like, how the hell are we going to do this? And he went, you know what? He said, actually, the first thing to shoot is Jackson Star, and we've got nothing. So he said, let's try and cool this off, and maybe we can rethink. And you go and do Jackson Star. And he was like, you can do this with your eyes closed. Go on, just go off and just do me something for the colony. And so I was like, yeah, great, okay. And I actually think that was a really good decision, because we were getting that bogged down with trying to think how we could get these Romulus Remus elements into the ship. Because originally I'd started off doing it, as looking at the Nostromo, looking at what Cameron had done for his the station that was orbiting, that you see very briefly in the start of Aliens, and I took elements of that, and I was rendering stuff out. It was really moody, and Dane was like, oh man, these are really cool, these look ace, and yeah, it just, I'm glad in a way, because it just meant that I could get on to do Jackson Star. And I think really what Josh and Alex did with the station was way, way, way beyond what I could have done with it anyway. I think what those two did with it was just amazing work. It was absolutely beautiful. And some of the shots that Alex and Josh did for that, I remember sitting there watching it at the premiere and thinking, wow, that looks absolutely stunning. God bless them for doing that.
Where was the wolf, though? They got off lightly.
Well, yeah, they did get off lightly because I think it would have been, personally, I think it would have been the wrong decision. And I think Naaman knew it would have been the wrong decision. But at that point, it was that early on in the production. It's like, do you really want to go storming in and go and saying, oh, no, that's never going to happen. You're never going to be able to get that to work. And all, I mean, nobody wants to do stuff like that. So I think shifting it over and giving everyone a break from it was probably the right idea, probably the best decision.
I guess they ended up just putting the wolf on the plaque instead.
Yeah. And in fact, the station never even got designed until, God, it must have been like halfway through our cycle, wasn't it? It took quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, what really helped, because Naaman, bless him, he's not only is he corralling all the design, but he's got to start building stuff.
Yeah.
So the exterior doesn't have to be properly locked off until in post, because we're not going to build that. But the corridor, the airlock, so you kind of have the tail wagging the dog to some degree. But Josh and Alex designed a lot of the interior of the space station. So it makes sense for them, when Alex has got his big corridor, you're sort of plotting out what's going to be on the outside of the space station. So it's kind of, it did come a bit later, but those guys, it was kind of their natural evolution through that job to jump outside and plot that thing out.
Yeah.
I'd be very curious to see some of those earlier designs, Cole, if you ever get a chance to share those in the future.
Cole.
I have. There's about 3 or 4 of them that are actually pretty close. I found them the other day and I was looking at them and was thinking, you know what, that's actually not far off, because they're like thumbnail sketches, and I just kept doing. Oh my God, I can't even remember how many I did. There was that many of them. And there's a few of them, and I think, yeah, you know what, they're actually, I could have took them somewhere and maybe done something nice, but again, what Alex and Josh did, and then I got a chance to have that, pretty much that whole world to play with, which was just amazing. Naaman, bless him, Naaman was just like, you just do what you do and just go for it, and he left me, Fede always used to say in the town hall meetings, him and Naaman used to say, if you don't hear from us, it means you're on the right track.
Yeah. You're not going to get fired. You want to be more worried when they send you an email.
Yeah. And if you need steering back, we'll send you an email or we'll do a Zoom call. And, I was just left pretty much to I just kept chucking stuff over to Naaman and Fede, and all they were doing was like, this is good, this is good, this is good. And I was just like, I'm just going to keep going and, blast out as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, there was another concept artist on the film, Valentin Petrov, that did some designs where the Remus and Romulus modules were a bit more separated and like a dual tower design. I thought those were really interesting as well.
They had the domes, didn't they? Like the Nostromo domes underneath the...
So Valentin was from DNEG. So that was one of the guys. There was about 4 of us. I think there was me, Valentin, Sergei Grechnok, and Armand. I think Armand was there as well. But yeah, Valentin was from our stint when we were working on it with DNEG. So there was a lot of ideas that came from those very early, from those pitches to VFX, that actually still came through, and stuff was still used. I mean, there's stuff there where stuff that you wouldn't really notice, but there's a bit where the black goo jar pops up, and it's the laser thing's all done, the holographic thing's all done. Well, I've got stuff that I was doing. We didn't get told what was going to be in there, so I just put an alien in, and it's all the streaky lines. And when it come on, I was like, All right, that's what they wanted that for. So Fede must have used stuff. I think there's even some stuff from the 3D printers that I did for the face huggers. I'm sure I saw some stuff like that was on the sets. I need to have a look through, but we were doing stuff like 3D printers for face huggers and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
And I noticed you posted a concept of the offspring as well. And that was really cool looking because personally, and this just comes down to preference, like I was hoping for something of a bit more like leaning towards the alien side of things, and your concept very much looked like that.
You know what? It was really weird because that guy was on in the script. He was on when we were doing the stuff for DNEG. So that was before anything had properly kicked off. Fede had already marked that guy to be the offspring. And I remember getting showed the photographs and going, "Oh my God, is that guy real?" And he's like, he's going to be like the new sort of alien offspring.
Do you mean Bob?
Yeah.
The actor, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And it was the offspring stuff was, again, that was all down to Fede and Fede's attitude, where, like Matt said before, if you wanted to have a go at doing something, then you could have a go at doing something. I mean, we were all professional enough to say, to realize that we weren't going to go and start pissing in people's ponds and stuff like that. It was, but there was stuff there. There was elements there that, the offspring was one thing that had come up. I think there was a couple of other things. And he was just like, have a go. If you're getting bored or you're getting bogged down, take a bit of a break and have a bit of a mess around. And
that never happens as well.
That never happens.
I've never had that ever, where you've got your assignments and the director and the designer say to you, if you need a day off, pick your favorite thing in the script and have a go. That's a unique experience, and I loved it, and I doubt it will happen again.
But it was great because, I mean, that stuff, the offspring stuff, I actually did on my tablet. I'd never done anything like that before. I don't really do character stuff. And I started to teach myself sculpting on my tablet. And I painted over them a bit in Photoshop. And I just thought, and I sent them over to Naaman. And then Naaman Zoom called me and he went, "Oh my God," he said, "where did these come from?" He said, "Fede thinks that the stuff are nightmares." He said he absolutely loves them. And in fact, when we were in Budapest, they had one of them blown up. It was a big poster on the wall. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is like unreal." I mean, they literally took about 20 minutes to do. They weren't very good. And I was just like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but it kind of resonated with Fede and Naaman. They were like, "Oh, these are brilliant. These are great." So that was nice as well, to get feedback like that when it's stuff that you're not used to doing. Like Matt said, that never happens where you're on a project. You're given something and that's it. And if you go off reservation and start doing other people's stuff, then you're going to get a slapped wrist, or yeah.
I think you guys said it at your 101 panel, but didn't Fede say something about leave your egos at the door when it came to this sort of collaborative process that he was driving with Romulus?
Yeah, I think it's a good way to start a job, and we all have egos. It's just a case of managing them. But he, in the first meeting, he said, because we're all, when you meet the director, you are slightly heightened, you're slightly nervous, and he said, check egos. You've all got the job, like you're safe. Now we can play in the Alien universe.
Did you guys, so just still on that topic of your palette cleansing and going and doing other the bits that weren't strictly assigned to you, were there any elements that you guys, took a break with and played with that ultimately ended up in the finished film? Was your cryo gun one of those, Matt?
No, the cryo gun wasn't, but what was the cryopod, because that one was sort of put out to farm. No one was doing it. And I think actually Naaman asked me and another colleague of mine to have a go at the pod. And then the pod became the EEV, and then the EEV needed the cryo fuel. So it was kind of a chain of things that led to doing the cryo gun at the very end. But I took a stab at the one of the pods, and that kind of led me on to doing anything cryo related.
So was it the EV was just pods initially, or
you were
designing that individual component of the EV?
It's hard to remember, because now when you watch the film, everything is there and it all makes sense. And they jump in a pod, the pod goes in the EEV, the pod then goes into the ship, the Corbellan. So, but at the time, I think I did some pods that were a bit more involved. They kind of had like opening lids, like the Nostromo ones. But it, like with many aspects of a movie this complicated, it's working out how that works, how they go into the floor. I think from memory, it was Naaman's idea to have them kind of sink down into the floor. So Naaman would draw me like a honeycomb sketch of how he'd like that to work. And then we sort of squashed it a bit, so it became the Wayland, the W. But I can't remember. I remember it feeling really complicated. It feels quite natural how it works in the movie now, but I remember at the time it was a head scratcher trying to get that.
I remember that, and it was because I think we all had a go at it. I mean, I actually found my 3D meshes of that, and we'd all done the same sort of hexagonal thing. It was really funny. But I saw yours and I thought, I've sod that. I'm not going to send mine over. Yours is way better.
It's one of the things you want to do. I always loved the EEV in Alien 3. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to do an escape pod.
Yeah. It's like the Echo probe. I think we all had a go at the Echo probe.
I did. I can't remember if I did. I was like the last man standing to have a go at that, because I felt like I was being greedy doing the first ship. I thought, I'm going to keep my head down and not touch another spaceship on this movie.
The EV is interesting in that it's completely unlike any of the, it's unlike the Sulaco's EEV. It's unlike the Star Cobb. It's very sort of, it feels more like an escape vehicle, because there's just these cryo tubes that you can go and jump in. They shoot you down and shoot you out. Whereas like the shuttles, you've got to go in the shuttle, you've got to get everything going, you blast off. The Sulaco's is specifically when you're already in cryo sleep. If you're not in cryo sleep, you're fucked. So what was that process like, going that with that sort of mentality?
I always try and follow form follows function with design. So the pods were kind of established already. So you need to find like a nice shape for these things to be held in. And then you think, well, it's probably going to enter an atmosphere. So I'm going to put shielding on one end, like heat shielding. There's some pads on the side for parachutes, which you're never going to see in the movie, but all these things inform the design. So you list atmospheric entry, parachutes, life support, engines, and then the more you list and the more you read the script, you kind of let it design itself when you have all of those things in mind. And then the W is like a cheeky extra, alien thing. So
I noticed that on your containment ship as well. The W's, the windows kind of look like the Wayland Industries.
Yeah, well, that came from Chris, the director. That was his idea, and it was like it's a great idea. I can't take credit for that one.
Fair. Cole, what about you in terms of the random things that ended up in the finished film? Was any of your tangents included?
You know what? I don't. It's kind of weird, but I don't think they did, because even though we had the freedom to do this stuff, once we got going, you just didn't have the time, because there was that much stuff to do, and you were engrossed that much in everything. I mean, once in a while you would just go, oh, you know what, I'll have a go at the Echo Probe or whatever. But you actually felt guilty because you were having too much fun. It honestly, I can't describe it, because Matt and I would have Zoom calls, and the two of us would be like kids on Christmas morning, because you would get up each morning and you would leg to your machine to see what people had done in Dropbox, to see what the guys had done, because it was just like, and there was that much stuff getting chucked in every day. And it was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is incredible. Wow, this is brilliant. And everyone would be emailing everybody else saying how fantastic the stuff was and that. And so whilst we had the freedom to do stuff, I think after I'd done the hybrid, I just thought, you know what? I just need to concentrate on getting this world stuff built now.
That did calm down. The Fede's kind of everyone have a go. That we did do that to begin with, but then as we got into it, you just got locked into what you were doing. And then when the art department fully crews, you then start working with the art directors. So if you're doing, like Cole, say, was doing the location work, I was doing interior sets, we both would then split off and work with sort of different teams within the art department, different art directors. So they need your 3D models, your visuals and everything. And you kind of, at that point, the fun, like the Disneyland part of the job is over, and you're into the, like,
tunnel vision.
You've just got to like churn the work out. But I think we were really lucky to have maybe 6 or 8 weeks when it was just the concept guys, Fede and Naaman. And that really was the kind of the throw everything in a hat period. How
do you think that compares to that experience?
Yeah.
How do you think that compares to the Ridley's wine parties of Prometheus? Would you have rather the wine parties, or were you happy with what you got with Fede? And
I've got to go Team Fede, because I want to work with him again.
It's funny, I mentioned that at the Perfect Organism podcast we were on, Matt. I was like, did you get in on those wine parties?
No, there was no glamour on Prometheus. I was way too late for the party for that. I was in a porta cabin in the snow at Pinewood in December 2010, I think, and it was I was happy to be there, but it was cold and grim.
It sounds like the days of Aliens as well, where they're working in shed. I think it was the Skotak brothers working in the sheds at Pinewood, on effects.
Areas of Pinewood have moved on, but areas of Pinewood have not moved on yet.
I actually, you know what? I can barely remember it, because it was that day led to a rule that I now have, which is never go anywhere that makes you come home after midnight. But I drove down to Pinewood many years ago to watch a showing of Aliens on the lot.
What year was that? Because I went to one of those. I went to one about 2012, 13.
Yeah, it's around there. Yeah.
Because they were going to do one outside, and there was a thunderstorm, so we had to.
And we had to watch it inside. Yeah, I was
there.
Yeah, after that, I was so tired driving home that made me have a rule of never go anywhere that's going to bring you home past midnight.
Yeah.
I'd never been that far down past the M1 and further on, but I barely remember any of that night, other than being so fucking uncomfortable on the floor in the
floor. We sat on the stage floor as opposed to being in the garden, because they had Marines and they had like Colonial Marines there, but there was a massive thunderstorm, so we had to go inside. How funny, yeah.
I love moments like that. And Matt, you just kind of touched on this a little bit. So, when he was working on the first Alien, Ron Cobb had this very specific mentality of making everything he designed look functional and real. And at the time, he took inspiration from the current and the modern space technology, from NASA of the 1970s. Some of your early Echo probe concepts look heavily inspired by our current NASA. And you mentioned the heat shielding. You can still see that kind of space shuttle, that kind of modern day, although I feel like it's a lie to call space shuttles modern day, but you still see it in current, NASA looks, is that very specific heat shielding. We were curious as to how you both felt about that inspiration and design mentality of Rob Cobb and the 70s version of the future, and how that sort of fits in with trying to take inspiration from what is realistic now and what is modern NASA influence now. Does it still work, in your opinions?
Talking to Fede when we first we had the first meeting, and it's a similar mentality to when I worked on Rogue One, is to treat this movie like a period movie, as if you were doing, a 1950s New York movie or a Renaissance Italy movie. That we're doing a period movie, but the period is the far future through the eyes of the 1970s. So I didn't look at contemporary technology. I looked at things from 79. The heat shielding on Echo was a Fede request, I seem to remember, because I'd gone for quite a white looking ship, because Ron Cobb had designed an escape shuttle for an unused one. It was white but had red kind of banding on it, and I kind of liked that.
That ended up in isolation as well.
Yes, yes, that exact design. So it's a case of kind of trying to look at the future through the 70s, I guess. It's tricky because we all looked at Ron Cobb stuff, but equally you have to look at the miniatures and the set builds from the movie, because they're slightly different to the Ron Cobb designs. They've been through people like Roger Christian, and I think Michael Seymour was the production designer. So you start with the concept art, but then always look at the movies, because that's kind of its purest form in terms of how, where we should be shooting. I think with Cole's stuff, he's also looking at aliens a bit more with the colony.
Yeah, I mean, mine was definitely more aliens, I think, than Alien, and definitely a lot more Blade Runner than probably anything else, and even with a bit of Outland shoved in there. But it's that whole 70s aesthetic, to me, is just heaven anyway. I've grown up looking at that stuff, and hundreds of books and art books on that era. So yeah, it was just really nice and refreshing to actually do something from that sort of time period. And like Matt hit the nail on the head, it is like a period movie, because everyone always talks about that 70s aesthetic, and Star Wars had that 70s aesthetic, and they nailed that in Rogue One. And hopefully we've sort of nailed it in Romulus as well. There was definitely a lot of thought from the guys into that, and I know Gus had a few battles where they were trying to change stuff, and he was like, no, it needs to be like this, like 70s, and the big CRT screens and all that. And I think people were trying to change it to flat screens and touch screens, and he was like, no, it needs to be.
It's tricky because you're doing a period movie, like Cole said, with the TVs. In Alien and the original Star Wars movie, they used Roger Christian would use lots of found objects, piping, break open the TV, but we can't really use found objects as much now, because our found objects are flat screen TVs, iPads. So if you want to use some 70s Tupperware, you either have to get it on eBay or 3D print. So what was cheap and quick to do in the 70s, or cheaper and quicker, is harder now because we're trying to replicate a found object mentality, but we're going to have to 3D print or a Mr. Fusion for the kitchen.
Yeah, although Matt, they did use vacuum cleaners.
They did, yeah. Should be the set decorator, yeah. And it looked mint. Like, it looked so good.
It was hilarious because we didn't know, and she pointed out the vacuum cleaners. And we were like, no way. That's amazing.
But they're so smart, set deck. You spray them black, you dress pipes over them, you hide the seams, and then, you know, it's a huge skill what those guys do.
It's like with, I forget whether it was Aliens or whether it was Galaxy of Terror, but like the whole thing of McDonald's fast food burger containers stuck on the wall that were spray painted, and there's your futuristic set detail.
Yeah, you just lower the lights. You can do that stuff, but you just have to light it well.
Yeah,
and not shape the walls too much.
That the inside of the Cobb, when we went in and we must have chilled out there for about 40 minutes, and we were just looking around at that cockpit, and it was just amazing because they just stuck stuff everywhere, and the thing was everything looked right. Everything looked like it was meant to be there, and it was all that aesthetic. It was all that chunky buttons, big screens, everything worked, you know. And you just sit there and you go, "Wow, this is just."
I don't know who it came from, whether it was Fede or someone in set deck, but inside, you know, the toilet where
the age thing.
Yeah, they had the character's age marked on the wall because they'd been kids and they'd grown up.
Yeah, I love that. That was such wonderful little set detail.
It's so lovely. Like, we have that in our kitchen, you know, with our kids, and you know, Fede said, well, they've spent their whole lives on this ship. They've got nowhere to go, and it's just really.
There was another little detail that I noticed that I really liked as well, which was like a scuff marking on one of the monitors that you had a lot of. Of focus on, and I was like, this is the sort of set detail that we loved in Alien. You know, this used appearance, little details like that imply so much history.
The stick is torn off, so the stick is gone, but then you just got the glue and the residue.
Yeah, it's something I feel like Romulus did really well at, was just the retro tech implementation, because we still had some very modern feeling pieces of technology like the video watch or the handheld gaming device, but they looked like old school Alien.
Yeah.
And as fans, it is a bit odd to go back and watch like Covenant and see them using like Microsoft Surface and little Audi rover and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's just different takes on the world building. But speaking of the world building, Cole, you were responsible for designing Jackson's Star, which is the first time we've seen a more developed colony on the big screen. Jackson's Star had been up and running longer than Hadley's Hope, and while we still see some colonists living in trailers, the main street didn't really have the prefabricated look of Hadley's Hope. It seemed to have more solid foundations in the concrete look. Was this a deliberate design approach to suggest a longer functioning colony than we'd seen previously?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it came down to, as well as finding a location that they could that would fit, because that was, I mean, whoever found that location, it was just absolutely spot on before we'd even done anything to it, because it's got that the concrete bunkers that were at the sides. I don't even know what
those silos.
What are they? Silos, are they? No, they've got
the circular things, or are you talking about the angular stuff?
Yeah, there's angular stuff,
Right.
which I went and filled it all out with shops and stalls. But they're actually there in a real, and it's very 80s. I always think of the 80s as being very angular and hard, and you know, hard cold surfaces and so forth. And so half the battle was won with that, because that was there. But yeah, it was a weird one, because it was, like you say, there's Hadley's Hope. I think Hadley's Hope, because it hadn't been established long. You know, Fede always said to me that little area of Jackson's Star was just that area. it had been built up, because that was the only bit that had been sort of terraformed, and the atmosphere processor was only kicking out a certain amount of stuff. So it was like almost like a self-contained little bubble. And if you went outside of that, then there wouldn't have been a breathable atmosphere, or the atmosphere would have got worse and worse and worse the further you went away from that mining area and the street area, which I always thought was a really interesting idea of Fede's to come up with that one. But yeah, I think we just got really lucky with that particular location, and it even had two cooling towers in the back, which you already had your point of reference for where the atmosphere processor was going to go. I mean, it was just like, oh, this is a no-brainer. Where we're going to put everything here. It was so easy. I think even I'd got a daytime shot. I think Naaman sent me a daytime shot, and it even had smoke coming out from the top. And I was just like, oh my God, this is just like bang, atmosphere processor goes on, and you can just like email backwards and forwards like, do you want it like this? And Naaman's like, yeah, that's cool. And it was so quick to get stuff up and running on that location. It was fantastic.
And Alien Romulus depicts a very dystopian life in Jackson's star through the way its colonists are treated and through the brutalist look of the colony. Some of the more recent novels and comics also lean into the dystopian side of the Alien franchise. And it's brought about a conversation on this podcast in the past. How much is too much dystopia in Alien? When does it start to become too much like Blade Runner or Cyberpunk? Do either of you have any thoughts on that aspect of Alien Romulus and the franchise in general?
Well, I'm completely biased here because I believe that Blade Runner and Alien are set in the same universe. I've always thought that. And so as soon as that came in, and as soon as I started sending images over to Fede, and I said to him and Naaman, I said, this needs to feel like the arse end of space. It needs to feel so dystopian that these kids are going to risk everything and get in that ship. And if it's not, then we've not done our job. If it doesn't look grim, and yet at the same time, it's kind of got to look a little bit sexy as well. And you look back and you look what Ridley Scott did with Blade Runner. And it's like, yeah, that's the whole thing, I mean, I originally I'd done a whole layout using all the buildings from Hadley's Hope. So I literally replicated Hadley's Hope. And I looked at it and I went, it's not going to work. That's just not going to work. It needs to be something more. And then when Naaman came through with the location, I was like, oh yeah, this is a lot better. And we started talking about putting these. Originally, I'd done more concrete bunkers down the middle, and then we talked about, let's get some crops in there. But it was always that aesthetic that Blade Runner. There's one particular scene in Blade Runner that I always went back to time and time again, which is outside of Choose I place. And there's one shot where these guys come past on bikes, and it's in the rain, and there's mud, and there's some oil drums with fire. And every time I look at that, I go, oh my God, that's so bleak, and yet it's so beautiful. And that one shot was the driving force behind the stuff that I was doing. I wanted it to be bleak and raining, and and I know Naaman and Fede were going to just give us options, give us pink sky, green sky, yellow sky, whatever. But I always went back to doing it as miserable, raining, grey, just awful, against with this hard edge stuff. And so can it ever be too much? I mean, I don't think it's going to get to the point where you would have, the sides of the atmosphere processor with big video screens and, that type of stuff on it. I don't think it would need to go that far, but definitely on the lower levels of say street level Blade Runner, where everything's really muddy and bleak and just grim. I think that fits. And I just think that the whole thing fits, that whole universe just seamlessly fits together.
Yeah.
And just to spin off on that before you give your input on that topic, Matt, I thought it'd be a good time to bring up a fan question we had planned for later on the very topic you're talking about, Cole. So a never-ending discussion on alien message boards and social groups is around the franchise's relationship with Blade Runner and the links we often see between the two franchises. So the Necronar user notes that Alien Romulus certainly upholds this tradition in its portrayal of the mining colony in the opening scenes, but was there ever explicit discussion of design references to that of the franchise, other than
No.
what you mentioned?
No, unfortunately, I'm solely responsible for that. No, it wasn't, because I had literally, I think I had I used 3 films as a point of reference. There was no point in using Alien because Alien was set inside, and I wasn't really doing that kind of stuff. So it was kind of difficult to find stuff that would help me move along. Definitely Blade Runner, the original one, not so much 2049. Definitely Outland. To Fede's distaste, he's probably going to shout and scream at me. But I love Outland, and I think it's fantastic, and I don't care what he says.
I agree with you.
Yeah. And I think there was another one that I was looking at, which was a really early Roland Emmerich one. Is it Moonfall?
Moon 44. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's other stuff like Rutger Hauer and Split Second and stuff like that. So those were but the main one was definitely Blade Runner. The difficulty was keeping it away from Blade Runner. It's so easy to just go, I'll stick all that all over it. And, whilst it might look good, it's not really going to fit. So it's almost like it's like a toned down version. But I am totally on the ball with having Aliens and Blade Runner in the same universe. I mean, don't even get me started on stuff like that. There's so much stuff that goes into it with the synths and the replicants. And, I've had all sorts of rumors and tales that, is Tyrell, the further down the route from Wayland and all that kind of stuff. And I love it. I think it's brilliant. I think it's fantastic to link them things, because they aesthetically, they are so similar, and in tone, they're so similar as well,
Well, we will have to keep you in mind if we do a podcast discussion on that topic. I'm sure we could have some debates on that one.
Spoilers, we have a podcast planned about how much Blade Runner is too much Blade Runner.
Sign me up, definitely.
But how about your thoughts on that topic, Matt? How much dystopianism is too much for Alien, if there is too much?
I mean, I haven't really thought about it. I was just going to cap off what Cobb was saying, was you don't get any more sort of nihilistic and grim than Alien 3. So, Romulus is like a trip to Disneyland compared to the sheer nihilism of that movie. I haven't given it any more thought than that. I mean, they are sort of perpetually miserable movies, which I'm sort of there for. I think I like vicariously experiencing sadness and misery in the way we sort of vicariously enjoy horror films, for the same reason that it's not you going through those things that those kids or those prisoners are going through.
See, the thing is, people always go on about this saying how miserable. I think they look great. It actually brings me joy to look at all that misery.
Well, it's interesting what you said, the whole juxtaposition of the Blade Runner aesthetic with like dark, moody, in the rain, oppressive, but also in a way kind of sexy, I guess. Like,
it's beautiful looking stuff. You look at the lighting in Aliens, in Alien and in Blade Runner is just phenomenal. You don't get anything better. I mean, there's half the time there's no need for them lights to be there. They're whizzing around outside someone's window, and it's obviously some bloke with a spotlight. But what it does, it just makes everything look absolutely amazing. And I just think all that stuff. And what Fede did, I remember seeing the trailer for the first time, and in fact, I remember seeing footage. They sent me photographs of the set. I think it was around about Christmas time, or it could have been just after Christmas when they were shooting. And I was just blown away. As soon as I saw the photographs, I was like, "Oh my God, he's nailed it! He's nailed it! He's done more than what I imagined he was going to do." It was just absolutely stunning what he did with that whole sequence. And I really wish that we would have had. I'm going to be completely biased. I really wish we would have had more time on there, because there was so much stuff that I think we were looking at and we'd done previs for that just never made the screen. It was probably just time, and let's get it onto the important stuff.
Yeah. Just the nature of movie making there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And kind of speaking of that then as well, an aspect of Jackson's Star that you worked on, Carl, that unfortunately we didn't get to see in the film itself was the mining operations.
Yeah.
You've shared a bunch of concepts that you've done of that time on the film. Could you tell us a little bit about your explorations of that and what we missed out on?
Yeah, I mean, the mining stuff was actually pretty cool because Fede had real definite ideas of what he wanted for that. And you get to see it briefly. And in fact, when I saw him at the after party from the premiere, and I went, that looked really like one of my shots. And he said he just gave it to ILM and we're pretty sure that they just chopped it up because he was that specific that he wanted these. What he explained to me was there's this tech. He said, I don't know what it is. He says, but there's this tech that they've got and they just take these huge circular chunks out of the landscape. So he said, I want to see these definite circles, almost like giant Swiss cheese. And it took me a few attempts and I was like, I don't see how this is working. And then I did one and he went, that's it. That's what I want. It's like these. And so we were looking at stuff and it was like these huge drill cores that had gone straight into the rock surface themselves and then bits taken out the top. And you can see it in one of the shots. It's all in the distance.
Is this the horizontal rock face with the holes in?
Yeah, because originally it was like we had it set up so there was one shot where it was like this, they're walking up to it and one of the ships would fly overhead and it would peel off and reveal this huge sort of mountain that was all had these huge holes and there was all these mining operations going on inside. That would have been really cool to see. But again, I think it's either been through budget or it's been through time that they've chopped it back because that was the original, as I call it, walk to Tyler's, where they walked down to Tyler's courtyard. Originally, it would have been them walking down and turn to the trailers, but they were right next to the mining operation then.
Instead of the atmosphere processor being the big money thing there. Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of that atmosphere processor, when we first started seeing footage and trailers for Romulus, I had a particular nerdgasm actually getting to see the return of that technology as it loomed over Jackson's Star. Matt, you recently shared on your Instagram that you've been asked back during post-production to design this incarnation of the technology with the brief to make it look, more 1970s than 1980s. But that's a design that's so entrenched in Aliens rather than Alien. How challenging was it to make that look more Alien than Aliens? What was your solutions there?
I mean, talking that through with Fede, it was a case he thought you're going to get one or two shots, which I think you only get two in the movie. So he wanted it to be instantly the James Cameron silhouette. But if the one in Aliens is like the Mac Daddy, brand new one, what did it look like before that? So the methodology we took was, what if people like Martin Bauer, the model makers on Alien, what if they built the miniature for the atmosphere processor with the same mentality as the Nostromo, so more greebles, more tech. So that was it, really. It was a case of keeping that silhouette, but then busying it up. There's heat damage, so some of the around the top, it's buckling a bit under pressure. it's just it's nice to get in there. I built the 3D model from the technical manual, the Alien technical manual, so it's the dimensions are pretty sound, but it's just texture, color, and lighting. But that was kind of a bonus. I'd finished the job, and that was a 5-day sort of bonus holiday back in Alien Land.
Did you squish it down a little bit? Did I?
No, the tower's the same height, but the pylons are shorter.
Right.
They don't quite have that peak that they have. Fede sort of locked that off for some reason. But no, it's pretty much as is. It might look different because of lenses or how we shot it.
It's these kind. I haven't double dipped. I'm sorry to say, so I don't have the digital copy yet. So I'm eagerly awaiting December when I can start freeze framing shit like this and looking at the details more specifically.
I couldn't hold my water. I'll buy the Blu-ray when it comes out, and but I had to get it just to actually sit and watch it at your own leisure, and just because it's really weird. I know me and Matt have talked about this. It was difficult to watch it in the premiere because you're just taking in everyone else's work rather than taking in the film. And you're just like, oh, yeah, I remember that. I remember, who's doing, I recognize that. That's Nick's, that's Gus's, you know. So it's nice when you get it and you can just sit there and just go, and just watch it as a film. And I've watched it a couple of times now, and it's just really cool to watch.
So unlike franchises like Star Trek, the Alien series has never really had spaceship design, quote unquote, rules in place. The Nostromo looks different to the Sulaco, which looks different to the Auriga, and so on. So when it came to designing the Echo probe or the Corbellan, the final result is very much in the design lineage of Alien and the Nostromo. But how did that variety across the entire series influence the approach you took while getting to that final stage?
I didn't look at anything past Alien for the ship, for both the Echo and the Corbellan, and there is a jump. I mean, the Sulaco is very, very Sid Mead and very 80s, where the Nostromo is sort of a hybrid of predominantly Ron Cobb, then the model makers. And I buy that lineage of ship from Nostromo all the way up to the Auriga in
in Resurrection. Yeah. And the Betty.
I sort of buy, they're in different time periods, but we're very firmly in 79 universe. I think the Corbellan could probably be, even though we're 20 years post Alien, the Corbellan could be the same generation as the Nostromo. And I'm sure Cole's the same. When you're working on anything else, you're trying your best not to make it look too Ron Cobb or not too Alien, because you're not in that sandbox. But on this job, we could take the handbrake off and just go full Ron Cobb. And Fede, I can send you all my email sort of feedback from Fede and Naaman. It's always more Alien, more Nostromo, more Ron Cobb design language. Like the side engines on the Corbellan, I'm sure that was a Fede note, because we were kind of hovering around a design that was almost there. And he said, give me those like weird kind of brutalist engines on the side. And when we did that, it's it falls into that world. And color as well. It has to. We all tried a yellow ship.
Naturally,
like the original Nostromo, and it looks really good on paper, but it throws the audience. As soon as we made the Corbellan grey, it's in that universe straight away.
The yellow thing's just such a deep cut, isn't it? That's there for the nerds.
Yeah, and we tried it. I know Carl did a yellow Echo probe, Because it looks great, but it's just not because it's not in that movie, that first movie, and we treat that first movie, like the Holy Grail in terms of what we're trying to replicate. So if it's not there, it didn't work. It didn't sit well. So made it grey, and it's Alien instantly.
I was curious if you took any inspiration from some of the other little cargo ships we've seen in the Alien franchise, because you do have the cockpit kind of elevated and isolated from the rest of the ship near the rear of the ship. And we have seen some other things like that with the cargo lift in Alien Covenant, even though the cockpit was like to the front and to the side on that one. Yeah. But in Fireteam Elite, they did their own version of the cargo lift with like the cockpit.
Yeah.
Did you look to those at all for the Corbellan, or?
Not really. That sort of asymmetrical cab that came. I keep saying Fede or Naaman, but it's probably both of them at the same time. Naaman, I think, really liked the idea of the cab, like a crane, where a crane is all engineering, and the cab comes at the end because that's the last place you can stick someone to, do the controls. So it's all engineering, it's all mechanics, and then there's awkwardly a cab. So that's why that's kind of at the back into one side, and the other. So I did some with it centrally mounted, but then I think the other reason was Fede shooting out of the cab. You're going to get a much more interesting shot, with a sort of asymmetrical cockpit. But
and you get a better view of the length of the ship as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, all my early drawings, I just put the cab at the front because it's a spaceship. But that's the great thing about good feedback is you bounce ideas around, and then the director, the production designer, kind of, well, can we do this? And it's something you wouldn't necessarily do, but it's all character building within the design. So I love where the cab is now, and that's not my idea. That was I think I want to say that was Naaman who said do that, and we looked at, for the interior, we looked at crane cabs, sort of very rudimentary controls. So yeah.
And how cool is it they built an actual fucking practical miniature with that thing?
It's
awesome.
Pure icing. I
was reading the before and afters, answer to Cinefex, sorry. And they talked about the miniatures in that, and it was just one of those accidental afterthoughts of the film with the studio, with Alec Gillis going, "Oh, we have a miniatures company, by the way."
Well, I think Fede wanted to do more. He definitely wanted to do the Renaissance. I think he toyed possibly with doing a wide of the colony in miniature, like a master wide shot of everything. But I don't know if it's a cost thing, but I can't believe they built them. It's such a special thing, and to have other physical craftspeople build it and paint it is pure. Everything about this job was a one-off.
Yeah.
I'm sure that must be like trippy as an artist to see something you designed on a screen or on a page, not only seeing like a bigature of it that you can walk around, but also being able to stand on the deck of it, when you guys got to visit the sets.
It was nuts. Going over there with Cole, and it's Cole, Dane, and Nick. We were the only ones. We were the closest, but I mean, Dane and Nick that was a Herculean effort for them to come down. But to hang out, because we became really friendly quite quickly, and to round off the experience on set, to hang out with Fede and Naaman, went for dinner with those guys. It was wonderful.
And that was not a typical experience, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, again, usually we are. We come in, we do the job, and you never hear from us again, sort of thing. And yet, when we went over there and on set, everyone knew we were coming, and everyone was just coming over and saying hi to us, giving us hugs. You know, this is your work. This is your work. You know, people couldn't have been more generous with their time for us and appreciative of what everyone had done. You know, it was just, to be honest, I've never ever had that experience before. You know, for Naaman to literally take us around 5 sound studios and explain literally everything, and then for Fede to take us around the main shooting stage and talk us through
Fede's
everything.
at work when he was doing that. This wasn't the weekend.
Yeah.
This is in the middle of a shooting day.
You know, we sat in the tent with Fede and watched that poor girl do that stunt from falling from the
airlock
onto the, and she must have done it about 8 times, and it was so painful to watch. And there was one particular time she came down and she hit really hard, and everyone in the tent just went, and even Fede
went, go again.
Can we go again? Is she okay?
Which bit was this? Sorry,
when Kay falls out the ship.
Kay, when Kay leaves the
oh yeah, when she goes on the wall, the floor walk, yeah.
But the stunt woman, she was throwing herself out of that ship. That's a practical stunt. The leaving the airlock down onto the floor, that was it was fun to watch once. It was hard to watch 10 times.
So did you get to see the colony stuff as well that day, Col?
No, they had bits of it left. Bits of it were outside.
Oh yeah, because he shot chronologically, didn't he? Yeah. So
yeah. We ran into one of the trailers, and that was unbelievable inside the trailer.
Tyler's
Everything
trailer.
was just like, it just looked like some DOS house. It was just like people had been living in there. It was that realistic. We were all eyeing up the mugs as well, because they have Wayland Yutani mugs, and we were all like, do you think we can get one of these out? And Matt's going, no, we'll never get them. The security will kick us off. And we should have done that, Matt. We should have got them bloody mugs.
I don't know. They had those beautiful Nostromo, Tupperware plasticky mugs.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't steal from a film set.
They did. It was all right for him.
I think that's just expected nowadays. It's just the unwritten rule.
Yeah.
Just as long as you don't take the suit or the miniature, the bigature. Sorry, Matt. I'm afraid you're gonna have to bid on that like everybody else when it comes to a prop store auction.
Oh my goodness me! I cleared out the garage. Fede said in front of my wife I could have it, but I think maybe he was. I think maybe he was pulling my leg, but my wife heard him say that.
He followed that up just in case.
Didn't he say
it's crazy beautiful and desperate? I want them to do a modicum or something of that one.
I thought he said to us in the after party he was looking at getting it, but the shipping costs were ridiculous.
Oh well, can you imagine moving it? I mean, it would be so delicate. You'd have to strip it down. You'd have to break it down into parts to move it.
That'd be cargo as well. Cargo ship.
Yeah. It's 10 foot long. The Cobb is 10 foot long. I don't know how long the Echo is. Maybe half that, I guess. It's huge.
I wouldn't be surprised if who has the license now? I think it's Master Replicas took over Eagle Moss's stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they did one.
No, they've done the pulse rifle. Are they doing a?
No, that's HCG, but
sure.
Yeah. But that's cool as well.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned, Matt, as well, that you designed the interior of the Corbellan, which, the Sevastopol in isolation, it seamlessly incorporates the distinct interior looks of the Nostromo, continuing that, visual continuity that we love so much in Romulus and we've, spent an hour and a bit gushing about. And then to top it off as well, you also had the challenge of making the interior designs consistent with the exterior. The challenge, I understand, isn't typically taken into consideration. So what was it like working on those interiors? Was that a conscious effort on your part to fit in all the different aspects of the Nostromo's design language?
It's like I said, if you're doing a period movie, you're trying, you can come up with new corridor shapes, but if you're doing a Tudor house or a medieval castle, you've got to get the correct brickwork or the correct stained glass. So I think the first thing I did was the airlock, and I've heard you guys talk about this. I figured they build that airlock it's on a conveyor belt, and that airlock goes in the Nostromo, it goes in Sevastopol. So the silhouette of that airlock is very close to the original one. I love the use of the yellow spacesuits in isolation. So I figured I want to get yellow, like an industrial yellow, into the doorways and the airlock. But like I said before, Fede's main note was always, can you make it a bit more Nostromo-y? But it's
not to. I don't know how to phrase this in a not sounding like a nitpicky nerd way or realist way, but does that not sort of reduce the designs that you can do? So yes, we love the Nostromo. Yes, it's part of the visual continuity of the world that we know, but that building doesn't look like that building. We've got different architectures doing different designs. Does that not sort of limit the look of the world that we're working on?
I guess it does. I mean, I always like restrictions because it makes you work quicker. I find the more the longer the shopping list of things you need to do, I find I can move through design quicker because it sort of eliminates certain things you can't do, you can and can't do. I always think on a movie like this, with the exterior, the interior, you find a new shape that we haven't seen, and then just pack it full of stuff that pack it full of the correct pipes and semiotic standard things like that. If you didn't like Alien, you'd find it restricting. If you do, you treat it like a holiday, I guess. But I didn't find it restricting. I mean, it was a challenge to kind of work out how the rooms would fit together. So all the rooms are kind of the shapes they need to be to work with the exterior. And so I know that the main corridor is very Nostromo-y, but then we have like the underslung cargo thing, which is a slightly different and new shape. I never found it restricting. I find it a joy, and I love working in that stuff.
In those aspects, I can understand it because you are getting to play in this thing that you love. You are getting to use the same design language and live like as you were designing the Nostromo or something like that. It's just one of those bigger world pictures.
I'd struggle more because I did costume on Prometheus. I would have struggled more. And we found this on Star Wars. It's really hard when you have a universe grounded in grime and working class science fiction. It's really hard to do opulence in those universes. And I would have struggled on Prometheus doing a clean,
all the hollow tables and everything.
Yeah, I would have found that a lot harder than just embracing all the things that I've grown up really enjoying.
See, that always annoys me on Prometheus because that ship was originally designed written in an alien-esque battered.
Right.
It was a prospecting ship to start with. It wasn't like the flagship of Weyland's fleet, so it was written as a very Nostromo-esque battered thing. But that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
The prequel's visual language there.
So a really cool inversion of one of the typical Alien tropes was the use of the cryogun instead of the flamethrower. Matt, it looks like your take on it was ultimately the one that ended up on screen. It's got that same sort of kit-based appearance we love in the Aliens' improvised technology nature. So tell us about the design process for that one.
I think Fede threw me that one because I was just when you're doing something like the ship and you're doing the interiors and the exteriors, you just after a couple of weeks, your brain's just melting where you're so exhausted. And I think someone else had a go and it hadn't landed. So Fede and Naaman gave me that one. And I think because I'd also done the cryo fuel canisters, I think that's why it landed on my desk. But I looked at a lot of flamethrowers. I looked at the flamethrower from The Thing, the one.
The nozzle looks very similar.
Yeah, the nozzles.
I like that.
Yeah, that was kind of a nod to another science fiction movie, and that flamethrower is a real flamethrower with the correct valves and everything. And Fede was always going for that hardcore realism. So you look at something in the real world that has a similar mechanism. So with the tubing and the plumbing, it was a kind of a no-brainer. But it was as I said earlier, I'm always form follows function. So if you look at that design, it's very much the pipe comes in. Fede wanted to put like you don't really see it in the film, but like a little click handle, like on an American gas pump where you squeeze and you can just leave it. So we worked in things like that. But it's just fun. I really enjoy prop design. It's something I can do quickly and easily because I've done it so much. And it, compared to doing a huge ship, I can do a prop in a day, and it's like a walk in the park compared to everything else.
And you took some passes on the pulse rifle as well.
Yeah, 100% I did. I'm not working on an Alien movie and not doing it.
I quite liked yours because they were very a lot more Armart pulse rifle inspired than what we ultimately got. Not slagging on the finish thing, because I actually really like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Andrew Bradbury, but he takes sole credit for the final design, which I think is outstanding, and his system. I don't know if it was him or Fede who came up with the stock that that in the script it had an aim assist arm. So with Fede's mentality of you can have a go if you want to, I had to do a few of those. I can't remember what I based it on, but I again, from doing weapons on Star Wars, I looked at the period firearms they would have had available at Pinewood in the early 80s. Something Fede said was, imagine they made an Alien movie in about 1983. So Alien is 79, Aliens is 86. What if there was a stealth movie made?
I like that.
That's your methodology for this movie. So I looked at firearms. I can't remember what. I looked at something like the Thompson, which is what they use for the pulse rifle, but I built over the top of that. But
that's funny because the finished product looks a lot more like a Chris Vector, a sort of a future warfare weapon than anything from the 80s. Yeah,
you can't whenever you make a movie, whether it's a period or sci-fi, it's always 100% rooted in the year it was made. Regardless,
you can't help it.
We've got 40 more years of watching TV, watching films. You just can't help but have modern day influences seep in.
Cole, did you take any passes on any of the props, any of the weapons like that?
No,
not interested.
No, that wasn't. I mean, I did some of the like the 3D printers and some other stuff. I'll try and post them up in a couple of weeks. But no, I was just purely give me the grunge, give me the dystopian rain and muck, please.
Oh, fair. No spinners for Carl then.
No.
So Romulus.
Interestingly enough, real quick, there is kind of a spinner type flying car vehicle in the Alien RPG in one of the pieces of artwork there.
I think I meant an Alien RPG.
Yeah, I'll have to show you later.
Okay, yeah. Well, I suppose bearing in mind I haven't really got through the last two modules, but and so Romulus is absolutely chock-a-blocked with various references to other Alien projects, and that includes a very prominent reference to isolation with the save point phone booths that we see dotted around the Renaissance station. I think it was literally one of the first major things we even saw about the film in the first set photos. And Matt, I believe that's something that we can credit to yourself. Can you tell us about that story with the phone booths and the way in which isolation affected either of your work on the film?
Sure. Well, I'm sure I wasn't the only person that suggested this. I mean, I think I can remember in the first meeting we had, I think Dane probably brought up isolation and everyone's faces lit up. And I'd already been thinking I want to get the save station in there somewhere. So I mentioned it then. I'm sure other people mentioned it as well. It was because we all loved the game. And then we just started putting it in the visuals. I know Nick did. I'm pretty sure Alex. We sort of circulated a 3D model that we were dotting around. But then it just became this whole thing. Fede really, like, he loved it. You know, he started to place it in scenes where he's kind of suggesting you should save the game because, you know, everything's about to go south when you go through that door. It's just a really lovely thing to be in there. I don't think any of us knew it was in there until we saw the that original image that Fede tweeted, which it's just great. I mean, I won't wax lyrical about Alien Isolation because we've all done that, you know, to death, but we all love it, and it's just nice. I mean, next time I'm going to put Working Joes in the background, and I did put there's a VidCon phone tower in the game, in one of the lobbies. I put that in there a few times, but I think we were pushing our luck with the save station.
Did it influence any more of you in what you were doing? So, like the I don't know if this is one of your guys' thing, but like the airlock, you know, when they're first boarding the station, you know, is this pump design, pump handle to operate the airlock. Was that set deck or was that you guys?
It wasn't me, but it wouldn't surprise me because Fede was white hot on control panels. You know, we had. You can see when Rain opens the cargo, the ladder to the cargo bay. That's a big Nostromo style lever, and here the Aliens airlock panel. If it's in there, someone considered it and made sure it happened. It's probably Fede. He's probably leading from the front with those things. Lots
of isolation, love. So we've spent all this time talking about your work and your design mentalities, but we're curious to know what your opinions are of the finished film. You know, you both attended the gala premiere in London, if I'm not mistaken. What was that experience like, and what did you think of Romulus when all was said and done?
Go on, Carl.
Oh, thanks, mate. Premiere was ace. Premiere was just, yeah, that was pretty damn cool. For more reasons than I'm going to go into, but yeah, that was pretty special. Yeah, I really enjoyed the film. I mean, I really enjoyed the film, and in fact, the more I'm watching it, the more I'm thinking, oh, you poor buggers, you know, from when you see them, because they seem like such a nice bunch of kids and they're all going to get chewed up. And yeah, I do have a couple of gripes, but they're not major ones. They're just like callbacks, maybe a little bit too much. But apart from that, I really enjoy it. I love the offspring at the end. I absolutely think that is just amazing. What that guy did in that makeup was just astounding. And he is pure nightmare fuel stuff, definitely. I think the cast are great. You know, Fede absolutely nailed it with the cast. Yeah, it's great. And the sequence in the cryo chamber is just a joy to watch. You know, it's got my favorite shot I've all the movie is in that, is when that face hugger swims down and jumps through the door right at the last second. And the crazy thing is when we were in Budapest and Fede was showing us the footage, that's actually some guy sitting on the other side and it's on fishing line and he pulls it through. And so it's like, it's another one of these little really old school techniques, but the timing on it is just absolutely impeccable for that thing to go through the gap of the door. I love it.
How many takes that took?
Yeah, it's great. It's such a fun movie.
Yeah.
Go on then, Matt.
And well, when I saw Alien 3 when I was 13 or 14, I've grown to really love that movie. It's, you know, I rate it with the first two now. But when I was 13, 14, I was like grieving. I was massively wounded. And this is the movie I wanted to see when I was that age. So I loved it. So it's hard to divorce how I feel about the film with how I feel about having worked on it, because we had such an amazing time, and we can never watch the film fresh because we know every beat, we know how things were achieved, so it's hard to watch it fresh. But I loved it. I know the Offspring is a bit divisive, and I'm really cynical with stuff like that, but I loved it. I found that whole sequence when you sit in the doorway for the first time. I mean, you guys were both there for the gala in London, and there was a sort of an audible gasp when they saw it.
Every showing I've been to has just been pure silence and just gasp at that moment.
So I should, you know, it's always hard when you have a new creature. It's the one in Alien Resurrection. What do we call that? The
Newborn.
That was just that didn't work for me, but this one completely did.
I think that's because the Newborn, they try and make it sympathetic, and they do in a way with the expressive eyes, but that's not the intent with the Offspring. You know, the Offspring is just nightmare. It is just horrific, proper perversion.
It worked for me tying it to Prometheus because, I mean, there is he looks like a really ill engineer. I don't know. I should. And it's the kind of thing I'd normally sort of roll my eyes at, but I loved all of that, and I'm all in. I just need to see it a few more times.
Yeah. And that's actually all the questions we have for you both, but we've got some questions from members of the Alien vs. Predator Galaxy community. AVP Patreon supporter and fellow Alien podcaster Christian Matzke asks if there was a specific detail from the set dressing or props of the original films that either of you are proud to have worked into Romulus in an interesting way.
Mine was easy. We got the bar sign in.
Nice.
That was the easiest one. I mean, that was like in the first town hall meeting when we were all shouting things out, you know, oh, we got to get the bird thing in. And then Matt was like, oh, we really need to get the alien isolation phone in. And, oh, we've got to have the bar sign. And as soon as that, we were like, that's got to be done. Fede
was especially proud of that. When I met him at the footage presentation in London, when I introduced myself to him and he realized who I was, he was like, I've got to show you something. And he just whips out his phone, starts pulling up these pictures from the set. He was like, look at that, we fit that in. He was especially proud of that.
Yeah, it was good. And what was funny was he kept saying to me, push it back further. I'm like, you're not going to see it. And he's like, no, we only want the nerds to see it. He says, we only want people like us to see it. And then it comes on and he's got it like front and center. And I'm like, yeah, because that was like really pushed back, wasn't it? Like, you know. But no, we had to do stuff like that because they're the kind of callbacks that I don't mind, you know. To me, they make sense.
It's dialogue stuff that winds me up.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the film, don't get me wrong, I fucking love Romulus, but you know, at the end of the film, when it's teeing up the get away from her, you bitch, I was like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, and then he did it. I was like, no, that's the aspect of modern reboots, modern requels, whatever you call them these days. That
you see, again,
like.
the audience loved it.
Yeah.
The audience loved it. I mean, you saw the reaction.
In my screening too, yeah.
And it was just like everyone was just like, "That's amazing. That's just like brilliant." And all of those moments landed. You know, there's some really nice little subtle ones that are in there as well. But yeah. But I think for me, yeah, the bar.
How about for you, Matt?
There's a bit of dressing on the Nostromo I really like. It's these. It's almost like a server, and then there's these acrylic windows. There's like this lattice of wood
in the cockpit.
They're in the cockpit. I think they might be in some of the corridors, but there's like tech, and then there's like a window, like windows into it, and we got that in the cockpit of the Corb. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I like the blinking lights behind the acrylic windows. If we put it in the drawing, they built it. It's like this dream factory where if you put it on paper, if Fede approved it, they just made it. So, you know, especially you'd note your drawings up with photos of, you know, why you've done this, and that always seemed to help click. And then, like I said, it was like this dream factory of things being made for you.
Yeah, that bit of tech behind the acrylic or whatever it was. I think Isolation had some stuff like that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It's one of those random details in Alien where it's like, that's just gibberish mechanical set deck, but it's just part of that design language now. It's brilliant.
It's a very Ridley thing to do because you have 2 or 3 layers of things going on. You have the tech is catching the light, and then the acrylic above, and then there's a frame, so it just gives you some depth.
And another one of our patrons, Scott Taylor, asks, the world of Alien definitely has its own style, what with books, movies, and games. Was it a challenge to pay respects to what's come before, yet give us something new to explore? And was there something that you loved but ultimately didn't make it into the final product? P.S. Love the style and feel of Romulus.
It was a pretty economical art department. I don't think many of us worked on anything that didn't get used because there wasn't the time to go off book. I don't think, Cole. I know.
It was pretty lean, wasn't it? I mean, that was. I mean, Matt hit the nail on the head. That's something that very, very rarely happens. Is that everything we did made it into the film, pretty much one to one. We can watch that film and go, that's Nick's set. Nick did those struts. You know, that's Dane's work. That's Gus's work. Everybody's work made it in almost, I would say, one to one. And that never happens. Generally, it gets changed as time goes on. But crazy that everything ended up so accurate.
I'd say it's also down to the script, because I've worked on big movies where you don't have a third act of the script until you're shooting. And the script we had is like almost verbatim the script they shot with there's a few minor things, but every set piece, every set and location was pretty much grounded in the script. So, you know, it was a fairly lean production. I imagine that's how they brought it in on budget, because we didn't, there aren't any deleted scenes, I don't think. There's nothing. We were experimenting, but only within what Fede and Rodo had written, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've still got the script, and it's pretty much bang on what we got on screen. And that was like, you know, they could have done loads of rewrites by the time that it got to actual shoot and during through shooting, but pretty much everything stayed the same.
Yeah.
And Oasis Nadrama would like to know, if you were given a big budget and complete creative freedom to write and direct an Alien movie, what kind of story would you make?
Oh my God.
I think if you asked me when I was 15, I would have said dropships, Marines, power loaders, just accoutrement. I just want all the toys, but there'd be no story at all. It'd just be a toy box. But I always really liked, there was a comic, an early Dark Horse comic about a female priest on a planet where they were...
No, not Salvation.
It's a sacrifice.
Sacrifice, yeah.
I really like that because it kind of re-mythologizes the alien.
It puts it in a religious context, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's interesting stuff. I mean, the movie I want to work on and the movie I want to watch is slightly different because I want to work on a movie where I can design power loaders and stuff. But I think I want I think I'd do a stripped down story like Sacrifice, something along those lines.
You know what? I don't know. I'd probably just go for the no story Marines and explosions.
Can I come? I'll come work on that movie. I'll come.
I would have liked to have done something where it was set in that world that we did. You know, the Jackson Star, that kind of world. That would be kind of fun making it. But I'm not sure what the guys are doing for the FX TV show, because that sounds like it's on Earth. I don't know whether I would, because I always wanted something like an alien war, you know, and it lands on Earth and there's a huge war. But yeah, I'm kind of with Matt where I'd go for something a little bit more low key and creepy, which would be nice. But I'd definitely like to see something where it was more in a human environment, like say for example Jackson Star. And if you had those limitations where you couldn't go outside that particular area because, you know, you're dead if you do and you're dead if you don't, I think could be quite interesting. Yeah. But as long as we had some guns and Marines getting chewed up, then yeah, I'd be happy.
It's funny, that's one of the things that people are sort of fan dream listing for Isolation 2, set on a colony world with an atmosphere that's, you know, inhospitable and all that kind of stuff. And fun fact as well, we very nearly got an alien Earth Hive, Earth War kind of thing before the Disney merger. They were going to do a bunch of animated short films that would culminate in an Earth War type situation. But
I love the imagery. I've always wanted to see a hive in New York. I just don't know what the story would be. I'm in love with the imagery, but it's I think
it'd be interesting, but it's explore. But I don't know whether that would just shatter everything from what I enjoy the most about the franchise.
Well, it is a claustrophobic. It works best in a claustrophobic setting, doesn't it?
Yeah, because I think stuff like that just ends up like Alien versus Predator. Then, you know,
that could be good. We haven't had a proper AVP yet. Don't write the concept off, Carl.
We haven't. No, we haven't. Although there was bits in that I really enjoyed, you know. But it would be nice to get something like that. I'm really dubious about putting stuff on Earth. Dubious about putting stuff on Earth. I think keep it away. There's enough stuff in that universe. There's enough planets and exoplanets to go and jump stuff on.
If you want to, in my opinion, if people want to tell a story on Earth or a populated world like Earth, they just set it on a more developed colony, you know, set it on one of the early colonies that was developed and established and is Earth-like-ish anyway. But there's avenues that don't need to be Earth, and a lot of people are worried about that with the show, but we'll see what they do. I assume the city's just going to get nuked anyway. Wherever it's set, I assume it's just going to get nuked. But So that is actually everything we've got. Before we let you land on your Varga and bask in that sunlight, is there anything you'd like to share with our audience, any anecdote or thought about Romulus that we just haven't given you the opportunity to with any of our questions so far?
I can't think of anything. Only that it was a really special experience for us. Cole and I have become very good friends. We talk with the other guys every day. You know, that's kind of the biggest takeaway, apart from working on a dream project. It's been the most social job. Like, we hang out. We went to Budapest together. We went to the premiere together. So it's kind of rare and special.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's been a really different and special experience to work on it. Not for the fact that it's just an alien movie, but again, it was definitely the people that we worked with. Everyone we worked with was so invested in the project. Everyone that was on set was so hyper, and it's just a joy to be involved with something like that and have everyone, be so up key about everything. It just made things a lot nicer to get up in the morning and sit down and do your stuff.
You guys have met Fede. He's the biggest nerd out of all of us. And when your boss knows the movies at least as well as you, if not more, then that's also a really sweet spot to be in.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest positives of the film for me, is I can feel everybody's loving it. It comes across as a passion project. It comes across as a love project, and I like that. It doesn't feel cynical in any way whatsoever. With the prequels, you kind of feel Ridley Scott's disdain for where aliens become, and you don't get that with Romulus.
No, that's nice. That's really lovely. It's really lovely to hear that. It's really special.
Definitely.
Do you guys have any socials that you want to refer people onto? Your Instagrams or your art station?
I can never remember what mine is. Matt Sav Concept on Instagram. It's the only place I hang out.
For the love of God, please create an account on ArtStation.
I know. I do have one. I just never maintain it. It's there, but it's completely dormant.
I know. Mine's under either Cole Price or Cole Design, and I'm on Twitter frequently, Instagram, Cara. Oh God, everything. Yeah, everything. ArtStation. Yeah. Come say hi.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Pleasure.
You're welcome. It's nice. Cole and I have been desperate to talk about this movie for 2.5 years now.
Yeah. Honestly, you won't believe what this guy's been like. He's like, I can't wait for it to come out. Can't wait. And then he keeps saying to me, now it's out. What are we going to do?
Yeah. We got nothing to talk about.
There's always the next Star Wars, Matt.
Yeah. Yay.
That feels like a bad point to end it. Okay, yeah. Seriously though, thank you both. It's very much enjoyed this.
Cheers, it's been a pleasure.
No problem.
And that was our discussion with artists Cole Price and Matt Savage, who worked on Alien Romulus. Again, we'd just like to thank them for taking the time to discuss their involvement with the film with us and just nerd out with us on Alien in general.
Definitely.
And if you'd like to find us, you can always do that on our main hub of activity, our website, avpgalaxy.net, where we have all the latest news on the franchises, reviews, editorial pieces, information about the wider franchise. You can also find us on all the major social channels, Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters who make what we do here possible. Aaron, do we have any new ones for the month of October?
We do. I wish you'd have told me this earlier. I'd have brought it up.
We can snip this bit.
I know, it's fine. We can cut it down. Okay. Okay, we've been joined recently by Johnny Gons and Michael McCarthy. I believe they're the most recent ones. Yes, they are the most recent ones. So thank you for your support. You've been helping pay for a new tool that I've been using for podcast editing to make my life a hell of a lot easier. To automatically get rid of lip smacks and ums and breaths and stuff like that.
Stuff Aaron hates with a passion.
Yes, that is the reason that our podcasts take so long to come out, because I go through and get rid of that shit. I fucking hate it. I hate listening to it in other people's podcasts, and I hate hearing it in our own. So you have helped me find and pay for a tool that is making my life easier. And if you're listening to this when this episode should be coming out November time, you will have seen that I've released an episode every week. Fingers crossed for the isolation interview. Hopefully I've released an episode every week of October, and the ease of that tool has made that possible. So thank you.
Yeah, we've been podcasting a lot lately. We had 2 isolation podcasts back to back, 3 hours, 5 people each one for the 10th anniversary of the game. And of course, we just got news of the sequel on that, which we're all very hyped for. But yeah, we have more plans for Alien Romulus. We're looking to get Mr. Alec Gillis on again, as well as Sean Mahan from Legacy Effects. So we're in the process of setting that up now. So that should be later in the year, but we're very excited to talk to those guys as well. And hopefully we will have more concept artists on who have worked on Romulus.
And as well as those guys for Romulus, we have got an exec who oversaw the production of, development and production of Alien Resurrection, potentially booked for the show. We have an actor from Predator in the lines as well as the writer and artist of a very popular Predator comic, potentially coming on as well. Just need to finalize some dates and details with these guys, and got plenty in the store, as well as a bunch of fucking discussions. Yeah. You know, we'll end the year with our typical AVP focused episode. We've got a bunch of the more recent stuff that we still need to discuss, some of the comics, some of the books as well, and a bunch of discussions that I'd like to do as well. It's just slotting everything in. There's a lot in the cards and a lot of fun stuff coming up, and I'm looking forward to nerding out as always.
Definitely. It's been one of the busiest, if not the busiest year we've had I can remember, and it seems like next year is only going to be more busy, and it can get a bit, even for us, a bit overwhelming at times. So again, just a big thank you to our Patreon supporters that help us manage all this. And we promise that we will be recording another episode of Genetic Memory. We're a bit behind on that one, but we will be reviewing the film Underwater. So look forward to that one.
We just need to get that scheduled in. But like I said, lots of stuff coming up. We're not sitting on no, that's not the phrase. We're not resting on our laurels. We are hard at work on stuff. I'm currently working on a new editorial piece as well. Hopefully it'll be up as of recording already. Hopefully it will be up as of release of this episode. We'll see, maybe. Go check YouTube, you'll see if there's been a recent thing. And I'm trying to whip Adam into it, starting to work on his next piece. But if you haven't already, go and check out the big video Adam did on the Fox
Genting Skyworlds, formerly 20th Century Fox World. There was an Alien versus Predator theme park that almost happened, was under construction, but the rug was pulled out from under them.
Indeed. So go and watch that if you haven't. It's a very good piece. Adam did a good fucking job on that. But that's everything. So thank you everybody for listening or watching. This has been Corporal Hicks.
And RidgeTop?
Signing off.